So, by way of introductions, if we can just move from closest to me all the way down to Rosie at the other end, and each of you just quickly introduce yourselves. Say when you started at Bank Street, or how long you've been here, if you want to do some math. Where you are headed for high school next year. And then lastly, one aspect of your experience here that has felt particularly significant, or as you think about graduating, what you think you're going to miss most about being a member of this community. So make sure your microphones are on. That means a green, press the button, make sure it's green. And then we'll start with Clara.
Hi, I'm Clara, and I've been at Bank Street since kindergarten. That would be 9 years, and I'm going to Ness plus M for high school. And I don't know if I could really ever just say one thing that was the best thing about Bank Street. But I guess, I don't know. I think in general the community and how I have a really strong connections with my teachers, and I can talk to them not just about school things, but about I can just have a conversation with my teachers. That's a really special thing.
Hi, my name is Nick. I've been at Bank Street since the 4s, 5s, so that's 10 years, I think. And I'm going to the Brooklyn Latin School next year. And one thing I'm going to miss about Bank Street is probably the opportunities that are embedded in the curriculum that everyone gets to experience.
I'm India. I came here in the 4th 5, so that means this is my 10th year here. I'm going to the Beacon School all the way downtown. And one thing about Bank Street that I'm going to miss is definitely the atmosphere and how everybody works, and just how everybody moves around each other, and how the kids in our grade just interact with each other.
Hi, my name is Bella. I've been here since the 3s, 4s. This is my 11th year. And next year I'm going to the Nightingale Bamford School. And what I'm going to miss most about Bank Street is the vulnerable conversations that I'm able to have with the students in my classroom, and how we're really just able to cherish the trust that we have in each other.
Hi, I'm Alex. I've been here for 10 years, so I started in the 4 5s. I'm going to the Horace Mann School next year, and one thing I'm going to miss is just the day-to-day interactions that I've had with my teachers, where we've talked about some academic subjects and some just things that felt like they needed to be talked about.
Hi, I'm Jane. I've been here 10 years, and I'm going to the Nightingale Bamford School, like Bella. And I think what I'll miss the most about Bank Street is just everyone in the community in general. I think our entire grade, definitely, but also the teachers and Jed and Javaid, who's the upper school coordinator, so yeah.
Hi, I'm Conrad. I've been here, I believe this is my 7th year. I'm going to the Packer Collegiate Institute, and I think something I'm really going to miss about Bank Street is the casual student-teacher relationships.
Hi, I'm Marisol. I've been here since I was 5 months old in the Family Center, so that's 14 years. Yeah, it's been a long time. I'm going to the Nightingale Bamford School with Jane and Bella next year, and I think the thing that I'm going to miss the most, Clara, it's really hard for me, but I think that it's our grade, because I'm really going to miss spending days, every day with these people that are so kind and welcoming and warm, and I don't know, I just feel like we've known each other for so long that it's going to be really hard to not see each other every day.
I'm Julian. I've been here since the 3s, 4s, and I'm going to Beacon with India next year. I'd say if I had to choose, like Jane, I think my favorite thing about Bank Street is just the community and my classmates as well as my teachers.
I'm Rosie. I've been here since the 3s, 4s. I'm going to Dalton, and I think I'll just miss walking in the morning and knowing everyone and just talking to anyone.
This panel is sponsored by the Nightingale Bamford School and the Beacon School. So actually the invitation went to everybody who was in the class, and so this is not a hand-picked group, it's a group of people who stepped forward and volunteered. So I wanted to pose the first question to Julian and Jane. And the question is to talk about a specific project, assignment, or piece of work during your time at Bank Street that really stretched you academically. You know, the kind that makes your brain hurt. And please be as specific as possible.
Okay, so we're studying, in the winter term, we started with studying Reconstruction after the American Civil War, and then we moved that into studying the Weimar Republic, which is Germany right after World War I. And at the end of that unit, we had to write an essay kind of connected to a quote by Irvin Stopp, who's a Holocaust survivor. And I think I kind of struggled with this essay just because we had learned about so many different instances, and I kind of wanted to connect Reconstruction to the Weimar Republic. But I think in the end, I think Jo, who's my teacher, she's here, helped me a lot. And also, I think I talked about it with my friends, and I think it really did help just because everyone here is so helpful when you talk about them, whether it be an essay or just something that happened to you. And I think that really helped me, and eventually I was able to come up with a fairly good thesis.
Okay, just to push on that, so what do you think you learned from that experience?
Well, I think I definitely learned how to reach out more, whether it be like to my parents or to my mom or to teachers when I'm struggling with something. And also I think I've learned just how to connect issues that we've been studying in class, even if it's hard to do so.
So this year, even right now, we're doing mock Congress, and I think probably the most challenging assignment has been writing a witness statement as Jeff Sessions on criminal justice reform, and it was hard because my political beliefs do not completely align with his. But I was writing a statement against the bill from his point of view, so that was challenging.
Thank you. So Alex and Clara, you're next. And so one of the things that we hold dear at Bank Street is that we're an 8th grade school, which means that from our perspective, we're allowed to embrace childhood a little bit longer and also not have the pressures of high schoolers bearing down upon people your age. But one of the challenges also is that it means that you have to leave here to go to high school. So I wanted you to talk about what the process has been like for you, navigating the big bad world of New York City high schools, and how has Bank Street supported you through the process? What have you learned, and how well prepared do you feel to launch to your next schools?
So yeah, I think we like Bank Street's definitely very supportive with the whole high school thing, even though I don't think anyone's ever 100% prepared for high school. Even if they say they are, I don't think anyone ever is. So but it's not, even though we have like a high school counselor who helps us out with everything, she's great, but it's just all our teachers, they know that we're leaving, they know that we're going to 1 billion open houses, and so they're really supportive that they know how to, like, if they notice that maybe you need help finding a school or something like that, they know the process and they'll help you out with it. I don't know, I think they've definitely been supportive,
You mentioned our admissions director, and she was really amazing in helping us both find schools, but helping us prep to see if we could get into those schools. And whether it was like mock interviews, where she'd give us advice on like what we should say, or like what's a good topic that feels like near and dear to our heart, or whether it was like talking to us about interviews that went well, and like things that we really liked about schools that we saw, and she'd advise us on different schools to apply to. And so I think something that was just really cool was the relationship that we were able to build up with Lisa. And yeah.
So for either of you, I imagine that just knowing when you started at Bank Street, the last time you families navigated the school search process, you probably weren't that much of a partner. That decision was made for you rather than with you. What did it feel like as 8th graders to be part of the process?
Yeah, it was definitely different than I thought. Going into it, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I thought I knew exactly which schools I was going to, and then I looked at all these different schools, and I kind of completely changed my mind about where I was applying to. So yeah, I guess it's really great to be in New York where we can have so many options. And yeah, it was great to know I had a choice. I could, with so many specialized schools and different that had specific things. I guess I could really tell where I would fit in and where I felt comfortable and where I didn't.
Yeah, and both for when we were applying to preschool, it was mostly our parents deciding. But when applying to high school, it was a joint decision, and that was really cool. Collaborating with my parents on what are things that I really valued and what are things they wanted to see me doing in high school, and what are things they enjoyed in high school that they really wanted to pass on.
Great. Rosie and Marisol, next question's for you. So, as people in this room know, one of the core commitments at Bank Street, one of the ways that we interpret progressive education is a commitment to diversity, equity, and social justice. And so, question is, being as specific as possible, can you talk about how those values have manifested throughout your years here from the perspective of students?
Okay, so for me, this is a great question because I love talking about diversity. I identify as biracial. My mother is Puerto Rican and my father is American. So when I was younger, 5 or 6, I didn't think of myself as a person of color. I didn't really see it in my life, and I suppose that it didn't come up a lot. But then we started RJA, Racial Justice Advocates, in class, and that was a really great space for me because I got to ask all the questions that I wanted to in a safe space where I know that everyone around me wasn't judging me for not knowing things or saying oh, she doesn't think enough about this or anything. And I grew to understand that it was something that was really important for me and something that I wanted to continue in my high school life. And so Nightingale isn't totally there yet, though they're working on it, which is important. And I think that I really want to be able to continue working on this. So next year, Jane and Bella vote for me for the diversity board. But I think generally just Bank Street's done a really great job showing me that I'm interested in this and I'm not that I want to continue talking about it no matter where I go and possibly past my school career.
I think Bank Street finds a way to put social justice in basically everything we do. I think, when current events comes up, like tonight we have assignment on Mueller's speech, and I think we find a way to put stuff to keep us up to date. And I think, for example, I think this year in community we had an institutionalized racism unit in which we started off by being assigned characters, and we found out a little bit about, made up characters about within New York City who found out a little bit about where they went to school, what neighborhood they lived in, what sort of resources they're around. We did a privilege walk in here actually where Coy, the diversity director, would call out one or two, a statement about different types of privileges, and you'd step forward if that was a privilege for you, which was really powerful to just see a visual representation of that. And we continued that unit for a while. And we even looked at a map, which one part I found was really interesting was looking at a map of poverty in New York City, and you can see very hard lines between different neighborhoods, and then looking at the map of different races in New York City and looking at how it is really segregated and looking at all the different colors.
So a little follow-up question. And I often have the occasion to interact with other heads of school and other leaders of other institutions in New York. And there's two things that they often say. One is that they love having Bank Street kids go to their schools. One, because anytime there's a lull in the conversation in a classroom, you can count on a Bank Street kid to sort of liven it up. But the other is that whenever there's a perceived injustice, you can count on the Bank Street kids to advocate and to activate. And so for both of you, just thinking about some of the high-profile incidents in the news around racism, institutionalized racism in schools, high schools, really could be anywhere, but this year there's been a number of them. One interpretation of that is that we should avoid going into environments like that. The others, we should run to them to be helpers, to help change these institutions. So I'm just curious, as you think about leaving Bank Street into high schools where there's a really heightened sense of student activism right now in this world, and in some ways that are really good, what does that mean for you to sort of feel out a new culture and figure out how you can be helpful?
Okay, so Bank Street's never been afraid to start the conversation and to continue it through all different kinds of topics, no matter what it's about, if it's about race or gender equality or LGBTQIA plus community, or I can name a billion more. We were just talking about abortions this morning, or this afternoon, I suppose. But I don't think that there's ever a time that a Bank Street student wants to shy away from the conversation. And I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know that I myself am always open to have that conversation during lunch, during class, and I think that it's important that we do have that conversation. And through high school, I want to be able to carry it out and to make sure that other people are comfortable having the conversation and that we're making a space where they can be comfortable and they can feel that they're given a voice and that they have as much of a place in that conversation, no matter what their race or their gender identity or their sexual sexual orientation. Thank you, I forgot the word. It doesn't matter that you can be part of the conversation as an ally or as a victim or as a perpetrator. You can learn more always.
Yeah, I agree. I think it just means, you're going to raise your hand in class and you're going to say the things that other kids might not want to say, but everyone wants to know about, or everyone's thinking about. And I think at least I hope I'm the one to raise my hand if there's some sort of unanswered question or something that we're just kind of avoiding and it's clear that there's something there, And I think also it just means that if you see something happen that's not right, that it means that in whatever form, whether your school has clubs or other things, that you try to do something about that, whether that's talking to a teacher or friends or other groups or forming something.
Thank you. So India and Conrad, at the beginning of the panel I talked about the run you've all been on as 8th graders in the last several months. So the question is, can you talk about the role that extracurricular opportunities, co-curricular opportunities like sports and field trips and clubs have played during your time at Bank Street, and how have these opportunities influenced your development both as students but also as people?
Okay. So I want to talk about field trips and how they're overall fun, but they're kind of making you learn when you don't really want to. It kind of feels like a day off from school, but it really isn't. But it's still really, it's still fun, and they're kind of sneaking it into the vegetables, trying to sneaking vegetables into your food. They're trying to make you learn at the same time while you're still having fun. A little bit of a trick, but kind of caught on. Yeah, I also wanted to talk about something that I didn't really think of before was clubs I'm in KOC, and I've always been in KOC since I was really young, and it's really important to me because not just to rant, even though that is a lot of what I myself do, to talk about big issues that we don't talk about in class. And as Marisol was talking about earlier, RJA, which kind of ends in the younger grades, but I definitely think should keep going up into the older grades, or at least be more prominent in the older grades. KOC has helped me a lot, and I think RJA can help other kids be more aware, and it kind of helps this experience in the school. So I feel it's not just enough just to have this school, it goes along with a lot of other things. You have to have certain other experiences here so you can get the full experience.
Okay, so I guess I'll talk about sort of athletics. So what I really think about Bank Street Athletics is the athletics director Ricky really tries to make the sports and play them in a way such that you can really not only create athletes, but create student athletes who are not only, I guess, good at sports, but also get their work done. Like, for example, I know the JV teams, almost every single one, before any game or practice, they have to go to homework club to get their homework done. And this is just something good, a good habit to create for if they're going to grow up and be a student athlete until, like, I don't know, the end of high school. It's a good habit of time management. And I think that's something that Bank Street really does well with athletics, not only with this, but also almost every single Bank Street coach is also a teacher of some kind. And I know many people who have personally, like right before probably like a very big game, have just been working on homework with the coach and just ask them for help with that. So I think that's something really how one way Bank Street athletics really intertwine with student learning.
So follow up for both of you. You're fresh off the DC trip. I would argue that the DC trip is part of the main meal, not just the vegetables that we throw into the side. But can you each think about a moment during your time in DC that stands out as particularly meaningful?
Okay. So I think one moment actually happened at like 6 o'clock in the morning. It was, there were a bunch of kids in my bunk. I think it was Julian and Nick were also in that bunk. And another kid. We decided to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning just to get ready to leave the next day because we wanted to create as much free time and just get as much out of the trip as possible. So I think some of that, it's not really relating to any of the stuff we learned on the trip, but this is something on the trip we really picked up about being able to like clean after yourself and get ready to move on in a habitual situation.
For me, as much as this trip is like mostly like go, go, go and like work, also like being in the game room and having like time off, like in downtime was really fun, and meeting kids from other places and kind of exploring like different views other than your own, and also meeting John Lewis, who like I was starstruck. I was really excited to meet him, and I got to shake his hand, and I was like, I'm never washing this hand ever. And I was really excited just because like I don't think all the kids in our grade really understood how much he means. I know Nikki definitely does, because I noticed that he kind of looks up to him in some ways, but I'm kind of glad that I got that experience. And then later on in life, when some of the kids who don't really understand like the significance of him kind of realize, they'll probably be really excited and happy that they got that experience.
What is the significance of him to you?
He's just like a hero. He's like the last like living piece of history that we really, from the civil rights era, that we really have, and we have to cherish him like now while he's here with us, and hang on to every single word that he says, because everything he says is really like monumental and has some sort of significance, and you should definitely quote him.
Make good trouble. Thank you. All right, so Nick and Bella. So one of my jobs is to help debunk myths. And one of the things that sometimes gets misappropriated, in my opinion, towards progressive education is that it's good on feelings and short on rigor. So I wanted you to think a little bit about what role rigor has played in your journeys as students. If someone were to ask you, have you found your experience at Bank Street to be rigorous, what would you say?
So as Jed said, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that progressive education is just warm and cozy and fluffy, but I also think it's not stressing yourself out to the extent that you won't be able to perform as best you can. And I think at Bank Street it really embodies that you need to push yourself as hard as you can, not as hard as the best person at the, just as hard as you can, and even harder, so that your teachers can help you progress, and so that you can challenge yourself and step out of your comfort zone. And I think as India and Conrad talked about, experiential learning also really weighs into that, and how it may seem like it's like a day off from school, but it really is like one of the most rigorous things. Like, for example, we had an exchange with a school in Madison, Virginia that was predominantly conservative, and they lived in a very rural territory, so a lot different from Bank Street. But I think it was just really hard initially to find common ground with them, but we eventually realized they were just like us, just they stemmed from different ideals, and we worked on projects with them. I specifically worked on a project on racial profiling with another kid and in Madison and one of my friends from Bank Street, and I think I just didn't realize how much that issue that comes up in NYC recurs in Madison, and one of the people talked about how they saw it occur just in their supermarket, and I hadn't realized anything like that, and I thought it was initially going to be one of the biggest things that I did, but it's much better than I thought.
One thing in the classroom that often happens is when we'll be doing math or in science, there will often be an easier option or like a harder option. And I think that that reflects how, one, teachers realize that not every student has to be in the same place. Learners aren't identical, and I think that Bank Street does a really great job at adapting to different students and different learning styles. But what I find remarkable about Bank Street students is that we don't fall back on the easier options. We always look for a challenge, and I think that Bank Street does a really good job at fostering the idea that being challenged is okay, asking for help is more than okay, and challenging yourself is really how we learn, and we learn from our mistakes. And I think that Bank Street is amazing at just reminding us to always try to push yourself, and if you need help, the teachers are always there for you.
So I'm going to follow up with the two of you. I think part of sometimes what's behind that question or that perception is that in the current era of education reform, people often equate rigor to test scores and grades. And as a community, generally speaking, those are not where we place our value. And as you saw by hearing where everyone's going to high school, there's a big range of high schools that folks leave Bank Street to attend. So I guess if you could talk a little bit about, as you've progressed through the upper school, particularly in the 7th and 8th grade, what role testing and grades have played in terms of your conceptions of yourselves as students.
Well, just in lower grades, not that low, but in like the 5th and 6th grade, grades aren't really seen as a way of comparing students or just seeing who's the best. It's really seen as pushing yourself to go as far as you can, and experiencing failure and not always getting that 100 that you want to see, but knowing that you can reach that with the help of your teachers is really important, and it's not all about just comparing yourself.
And I think that especially in the upper school, we start to see a lot more grades, and we start just seeing more of this evaluation. But I think that we all know that one grade doesn't define you as an entire student, and I think that we all know that one test isn't the end of the world. And so though grades don't have this huge importance at Bank Street, we all obviously want to do well on our tests and quizzes and homework, but I think that Bank Street prepares you well for high school in that sense, because we're always going to be trying to do our best, and we're not going to try to compare ourselves to other students. And I think that that's a great thing, because we're more than a letter grade, we're more than a percentage, we're a full student, and sometimes tests and quizzes don't evaluate that entirely, but we know how to take them because we're given them.
Thank you for that. I wanted to just give panelists a chance to say anything that might be burning for you before we open it up to audience questions. If someone on the panel said something that you wanted to build upon, or there was a question that I asked someone else that you feel like you'd add some additional insight to. I just want to open the floor for a couple minutes for anything else that anyone wants to share. We're good? Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Well, I think Julian said something at the beginning about writing from the perspective of just Jeff Sessions, and I think I had to do a similar thing. I wrote a written statement from the perspective of David Barton, so an evangelical Christian. I think he's a minister, I'm not sure, but it was just, I had never really written anything that conservative or Republican based, and it was very hard for me, but I think it, in the end, taught me that issues like that aren't as so black and white, and I can really learn something, even if it's from like someone who's very extreme in their viewpoints. I think I just learned a lot from that, and it wasn't as, it's not just as one side's good and one side's bad. I really am now torn between the issue, and yeah.
And also in the Bank Street curriculum, I love how you're really able to form your own opinions, and you're given the freedom to explore different ideas with the students in your class. For example, this morning we had a discussion on abortion, and I've always been pro-choice, but sometimes it feels as if like ideas are kind of just like a given in a way to your life. But this morning I really got into the conversation. I think that India very much noticed that. I was very heated, very passionate about it. But I think that that's amazing because I'm like most of the families here are very liberal. But just because of that fact, it doesn't mean that we all have to be like cookie cutter with our beliefs. We're able to define like what we think is right, and we know that our peers won't judge us for that.
Well, I also wanted to talk a little bit about the high school process because it was really hard for me, especially when it came down to making a decision, because I narrowed it down to two like sort of perfect schools in my view, and one was public and one was Nightingale. And I talked to so many people about this. So many. I cannot stress that point enough. I talked to like everyone on this panel. And I feel like we rely on our classmates, I think, more than I've seen in other schools. And I feel like I've gotten to know like some other places pretty well because I went to visit them and like saw open houses and things like that. And I think that we really do have a really great community, especially in my grade. I mean, I haven't experienced other grades, but I feel like I can rely on these people to have my back and to know what's best for me and to push me to do what I think is best for me, not just their opinion. I had so many people tell me, like, you don't want my opinion. Think about yourself. Don't ask other people. And in the end, it just made it so much easier for me to know, like, these people, like, I'm right, in a way. Like, I'm right, like, I made the right decision. I'm not always right, trust me. But, like, it made me feel like I was comfortable making the right decision, and I wasn't like stressing too much about it. Of course I was still stressing about it because that's just me and I like overthink everything. But I had a lot of like teachers and peers and Javaid and Lisa, who's the high school coordinator person, really helped me so much, and I need to stress that for you guys because you need to rely on the community around you wherever you are, and I think that Bank Street's really taught me that the most.
So Rosie and Clara first, then Rosie, then we'll open it up to questions.
Well, yeah, just going back to like the like I guess like when I was younger, I did, since this is considered a liberal school, I'll admit I did have the mindset that like Republicans are bad and Democrats are good, but I've completely changed that, especially like in the upper school, and so now we are doing mock Congress, and I'm playing a Democrat, but half of the class are playing Republicans. So I think I've gotten, I'm still like learning how to like look at every issue and don't look at who else is supporting it. Don't look at it, what your party, who you usually agree with, what they think. Look at the issue and actually determine, is this going to be good for myself? Is this going to be good for like other people or whoever you're trying to help, I guess? Like, is this, like, how, like, take your side based on what is actually fact, not what people around you want.
Just in terms of extracurriculars on the more musical side, I've been in chorus and rock band every year. It's been really fun. Got to have fun experiences that I'm also learning, and it's just another form of group work that we get to do at Bank Street.
Great. So let's really bring it up. We're going to pass the mic around just so that we can hear questions for the video. And you all can ask anything, and they're fully prepared to be responsive. So you can either ask a general question for the panel or direct it to a specific person or persons on the panel.
Hi, this is a general question for whoever wants to answer. What advice do you have for students entering 8th grade?
I think that 8th grade, 8th grade really prepares you for high school. I found an increase in work, I found an increase in responsibility, and I think that students should really focus on learning how to manage their homework. This year I've been going to the library every single day after school, and instead of doing homework that would take me roughly 5 hours at home, it will take me 1.5 hours here. So really learning how to use your resources at school and start using a planner. I think that really helps me get through 8th grade.
I guess I would also say go in with like an open mind, and especially for the high school process, don't have like your decision of this is the high school you want before you even look at it, because I didn't initially expect to apply to Horseman, and then I looked at it and I really liked it, and I think you have to really just see where the wind blows you, I think to say. And you you can't really bring in like self-doubts.
Also, like, every year, you think, like, the next year, at the beginning of 7th grade, for example, I thought 8th grade was going to be so far away, it was so hard, it looked so scary and daunting, and then, like, at the end of 7th grade, you're so ready for 8th grade, and at the end of 6th grade, you're so ready for 7th grade, and it goes back, and it goes back. Every year, you learn so much over the course, and then you become ready, you become prepared, and it's really not as scary as it seems. Like, I promise you, you will have so much support, and it will be great.
Okay, we're actually going to move on to another question, and Owen is going to be the runner for the microphone. Someone wants to raise their hand? Literally the runner.
Hi guys. Firstly, I want to say you're all so inspiring. It's amazing that you're sitting there and like educating us so eloquently. I'm so proud of all of you. I wanted to know, how do you pick like your nut or your cluster of high schools to even look at, or to even like kind of visit and choose from?
And I'm just going to remind the group of what we talked about. Let's try to make sure we get equitable airtime. So if you haven't already spoken a lot, try to let other people in.
So basically, I have an older brother who also went to Bank Street. So my parents already knew a bit about the high school process. Plus, I knew a lot of the, for the past 2 years, the kids that had graduated out. So that really helped us, just knowing what high schools were really great. And actually, my older brother went to Packer, so that was one. So I already knew I was going to probably apply to Packer. And basically, just knowing all these people, and getting to know a lot of the older parents through like either meetings or maybe playing a sports team together. Just getting to know them, it really helped with the high school process and getting to know what high schools are like pretty good.
So I don't have an older sibling, I have a younger sister, and I applied to actually, I think, 14 schools, which was way too many. But I think, first of all, I mean, I'm not really sure. I just applied to most of the schools that I had heard of, and some I didn't apply to for silly reasons, like my parents had gone to college with a person who they disliked from so I didn't apply there. Maybe I would have been happy there. But honestly, I applied to the schools that I had heard about, that my friends were applying to, that the people in the grade above me had applied to, and the schools that Bank Street kind of included, I think, because Lisa, who Alex talked about before, was also really helpful for that, and she kind of helped me and my parents kind of navigate the many different schools. And in the end, it is obviously narrowed down by the schools that you get into, but I think the tours, and it was actually difficult to decide, but I think in the end for me, it was just like the small things, like for some reason I just liked the school because the color of its logo is terrible. It's a terrible reason to, but I like Nightingale, and the color of their logo is blue, which is my favorite color, and I love Nightingale so much, and I think, honestly, I would have been happy at many schools, but, but I think Bank Street is really helpful just in navigating like the so many different high schools. And I think that honestly, you're going to be happy at any high school. You're the one who defines your high school experience, and I think it's up to you, really.
What I was going to say is you have to kind of find one thing that you really like, or a few things that you really like. For me, it was kids. So I like having friends. So most of the high schools were pretty fine for me. But and then I started to like find out that I kind of wanted to do art in high school, and I had gotten into LaGuardia and Beacon. And I chose Beacon because it has arts, but like I feel like you should keep your mind open, and just because you decided in 8th grade that you wanted to like pursue art, like you might not want to bet everything on that, given that that's how you're going to spend the next 4 years of your life, and how that could possibly shape you as in going and getting older.
Great. Let's have the next question from the audience.
Go to Emma. Thank you, that's all.
Hi. So you've all been here for 9 or 10 or 11 years, and I'm guessing that some of those years were better than others of those years. And I'm wondering now, when you look back, what your thoughts are about some of the trickier times. If you think about them differently now, how you grew out of them, just where they sit for you in your experience of a whole career at a school.
Well, I think that looking back, it was never as hard as it seemed. If something was particularly challenging, or I felt like really bad about like a certain moment in the year, or I had like a curriculum that I felt like I really struggled with, always looking back, it's so much better than it seemed. Because I think when you're in the moment, you like, at least I, like over-dramatize literally everything. And they're laughing because I've done Shakespeare since I was in 3rd grade, so I seriously over-dramatize everything. But I think that you just have to remember that life, like, it just keeps going. Like, it's going to. And in 8th grade, at least for me, it, like, everything seems so small looking back, that now it's like, there's so much open, like, air in a way that I'm looking forward at. And there's so much that we're keeping, like we're gonna keep going to, and you wanna remember the good times, and that's what you do remember. So, always remember that.
I think the first thing that stood out to me was like 7th grade, because I think a lot of people would agree that like that's when you get the biggest homework jump, and it was like, I wasn't really prepared for that, and it was like really frustrating, and I like, cause like we generally, well we do have a lot of homework in earlier grades, but I feel like when they really do try to prepare us for high school. But yeah, I guess with all my problems, like she said, like you realize you can kind of get used to anything really, and you realize that it's good for you. Like the homework, I do feel prepared now. Like that homework level is normal for me, and I know how to manage it. And like, so I think like you can really get through anything.
I've been here since I was like 3, and before that, like my sister was here, so I like crawled my way up to pick her up or something. So, I mean, you've been through everything at that point. Like you lose friends, you get some new ones. You've had hard homework, you've had easy homework, and I think you have teachers, you have friends, you have other people in the community. You talk to people, and you get through it at one point, and then you look back and you laugh at it because you're still around the same people, and it's over at that point. And I think so you're gonna get over it. And it's not like I hold huge grudges or I have huge issues that haven't been resolved. That just doesn't really happen here.
Also, I think that all the teachers here are remarkable, but there have been some ups and downs for me, and I think that really any education is what you make of it. So even if you have a couple teachers that your learning style just doesn't blend well with or you don't really love, I think that you really need to show up instead of kind of shut down, and I think that you need to reach out to your teachers and ask, is there any extra work that I can do, or is there any way that we can look into this more? Because I think that Bank Street is a really special school, and I don't think there's really one day that I don't feel grateful to go here. And I think that it's really a shame to waste a full year. So I think that you really just have to dig in to what you have, even if it might not be the best compared to other years.
That was a nice sound bite. Next question.
Sure, my question might be a little bit obvious. I've worked here for a very long time, and I remember many of you from when you were quite young and your feet wouldn't have hit the floor as you were sitting in the chairs you're sitting in now. So I'm very curious to hear a few of you say and describe something that you remember from as young as you can remember from being here. We've heard a lot about 8th grade, 7th grade, etc.
Try to hear some voices that...
Sorry.
You can't see each other all the way down. Do it in the neck.
Oh, okay. So I think that in the 3s, 4s, I had there was a boy in my class named Isaiah who's still in my class now, and we did not like each other that much in the 3s, 4s, and we kind of we used to fight a lot, and then in the 4s, 5s, we became best friends, and we're really close friends to this day, and that's just something that I've really remembered and cherished, and that kind of reflects my experience at Bank Street, is that you kind of become friends with everyone, and you can you can make anything a friendship, and that's just something that I've loved about this place.
Well, I just remember in the 1st grade, I don't really remember much from the lower grades. I had a great time, but still. I just remember, I think we did this market or restaurant that, where we were all waiters or gave people their fruit or vegetables. And I just really remember connecting with my friends and my teachers really helping me out because I didn't really understand the money aspect, and I kept giving people their change incorrectly. But I just remember that being one of the high points of my time at Bank Street, and even those moments where it wasn't super challenging or super righty or learning about reading. It was just fun, and I still learned from it.
Okay, so one of my favorite things that I really, really miss is dramatic play. Of course. It's so fun. You have boxes and fat
fabrics and like baby dolls and like old, very old like electronics and things like that. I don't remember them being very old then, but now looking back with like an iPhone, it's like a BlackBerry. That's like the first generation was like kind of weird. They were collected. I remember specifically my teacher telling me that she had something that was collected from like before she was there, which is like dramatic plays, like very Bank Street. And it's one of my favorite things that I'm looking back on, like playing like house or something like that, and like on the deck when it was nice out, or just like in the little corner of the room. And I go back in that room now. It was Anne's class on the second floor. And I go back and all the chairs are so small. So small. It's so weird. Looking back, like we've grown so much, like development, like through like mentally and physically, we're all like tall now. And I don't know, it's just so funny looking back and thinking like we used to spend our days like doing dramatic play and like listening to stories and napping, and now we're like algebra and mock congress. It's funny to see how much we've grown.
So my first memory of Bank Street actually was the day I came to visit Bank Street. I think it was before I even got in. I just came to visit it. And I believe I was in first grade, and I think I came to visit either this class or the class above. And what I do remember is how like I actually loved it, and I loved it so much more than the school I was in or current at that time. And like everyone was like super nice. I think this kid Arlo, he made it his duty to like try to show me everything he could. And I thought that was just that kind of just defines the whole Bank Street story about how having a strong community and welcoming everyone in.
Adding on to Marisol, I really like movement. It's kind of funny to like think about that there was a whole period dedicated to like making weird shapes with your body, and like now we're in a circle. And now we just have like math. It was really fun. And at the very end of the class, we would all just like lie down and like either starfish or like what was the other one? Y'all remember? Like child's pose or like starfish, and we would just sit there and like meditate, and like some kids would like actually fall asleep. And I think is it bad to say that was my highlight of being at Bank Street?
No censorship here. We're gonna take one more question just to be mindful of time. We got some students in the front row.
So going into the high school process, what was like your first step? Like, how did you start?
I think just asking Lisa, I think it was just asking, like, Lisa asking me what I'm looking for in a high school, and like even just asking for like 3 things, like, am I looking for it to have a really good math program, or am I looking for it to be more progressive or traditional? And I think that, and then she could like narrow down the extremely large list of New York City high schools into a much more reasonable list that was a lot more reasonable to look at. And yeah.
Rosie, go ahead.
Well, for me, I wanted to narrow down the big things just because there's so many schools and you have to be a bit random, like co-ed or not, public or private or both, or like size, things like that, that just, you can read the fact and say, you know what, I've been really happy with a small school, I want to keep going with that, or I want a bigger school. And I think from there, there's, you know, like an obvious sort of group you can look to, and you might be doing like a lot of different schools if you don't really know. And I also, for me, I had an older sister, so I trusted my parents that they might know, based on what I had said to them, what sort of schools I would like from what they had looked at from my sister.
I kind of started the high school process in a weird way. I actually started it at the beginning of 7th grade, so a little early, but I don't really recommend it. But I just remember, like, there wasn't really that much pressure at that time. I was just kind of looking at schools. I went to Stuyvesant, just kind of got lost, but I found my way around, and there wasn't really that much pressure, and I still, I looked at the aspects I liked, and it was really just that, and it came naturally. And then the next year, Bank Street brought representatives from schools in, and I just listened to them, and it really wasn't as nerve-wracking as I thought.
And I think that, like, I went to one open house in 7th grade, and then I did the rest of it in 8th grade, but I didn't look at too many schools. And I think that I did a lot of growing up in 8th grade. I think that everyone kind of has to, because you really have to think about what you want for the next 4 years of your life. And you really have to think about like who you are today, but also who you want to become, and the type of people that you want to be surrounded with, and the types of philosophy that the high school has. And so I think that like maybe in 7th grade, like it will be good to maybe look at 1 or 2 high schools that might not be like as high up on your list, because I think that the real evaluations that stuck with me were from this year.
Great. So I'm gonna be really attentive to time, and it's just slightly after 7. But as our closing thought before we thank you all, I want you to close your eyes, each of you, for 10 seconds, and I want you to think about being 12 school days and about 18 days away from sitting on this stage and graduating. What is one word that describes how you feel right now? One word. So we can start over with Rosie and then just hear these one-word reflections on where you are.
Sad.
Bittersweet.
I'd say conflicting.
Denying.
I was going to say denial.
Happy. Grateful. Excited.
Confused.
Those are like a little scared, maybe.
Can you please join me in thanking these incredible It goes without saying that they're 14 years old, 13 years old, and your children will also be a version of this, and not too long. It happens quickly, and I know how busy you all are and how full your lives are right now, so I really want to thank you for making time to do this for the people in the room and also the people that will witness your thoughtfulness and maturity through video. So thanks everybody, have a great evening.